Welcome to another episode of the Night Shift Deputy Podcast. Um, One of the things I wanted to talk about before we get started, I noticed there was a guy over in Rains County that actually got convicted of, I believe it was either multiple. I know it was a sexual assault charge, but it was, I believe it was continuous sexual assault of a child, and that threw me for a loop because when we were doing these sting operations, catching these individuals talking to children online, and we were set up waiting for them, and we would catch them. These guys were getting probation or pretty much slap on the wrist. A couple of them that we got that I know about for sure. But so seeing that one and seeing that him actually get convicted of that, and sentenced for that surprised me a lot. And as we go through these these stories, and you'll see why, and see why I'm kind of surprised on that. But because it was pick and choose for them, the DA's office, I should say. One of the things the DA's office would always do was they would put the blame on the sheriff's office, and that's what he would tell the general public, is that, oh well, it's the sheriff's office fault. Oh well, it's the sheriff's office fault. That's why your case didn't get prosecuted. But that wasn't the case at all. We were turning in solid cases, especially 2022, 23, and 24, definitely solid cases. But and I would ask them, hey, what, I've tried asking them what we could do for our cases to be better, and we'll never get a complete answer. So so seeing that definitely was a shocker, because during my time having to go to court hearings, that was actually going on. That particular case was going on while I was sitting there waiting for my name to be called. So, and whenever I was watching, because everybody was in there watching this particular case go on. I think it was a bond reduction hearing, and just watching the DA of Rains County, doing his business on that particular court case. I mean, it was just it was disgusting when, watching to see how he was acting. But I think they granted him the bond reduction on that particular day, but then I read a couple weeks ago where he actually got convicted of that, and I think he's got life, which serves him right. I mean, I don't think it's enough. I believe anybody that does any type of harm to a child, I mean, death penalty right then and there. I think some states are going to that now, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not too sure. I read somewhere where one of the states was going to that type of punishment for child sex crimes or something like that. I'll have to relook again and talk about it some more. But so we're gonna get started. We're starting phase 2 of my FTO. This is probably gonna be 2019, right there along 2019. So my first phase, I was with FTO for, I want to say, about a month. I was riding with him about a week in the car. Second week was driving, and then third week I was in my own car responding to calls. So got put on day shift with my second FTO, The second FTO, he was a good dude. I started kind of seeing a little bit, different aspects, different walks of life come in. When other officers do different things. He really enjoyed the narcotics side of law enforcement, so I got to see him make stops and get narcotics off of people. I know that I was like, man, that's pretty cool. I want to do that. And there for a while, when I was stopping cars and pulling over cars, man, I wasn't finding anything. I mean, I would pull over every single car and search them, but just couldn't find it during the day for some reason. And I'm like, man, I couldn't understand why. And they're like, man, a lot of the guys, they would talk, man, it's just luck, luck of the draw out there. It's always different everywhere, working narcotics. I didn't really have a lot of, classes that I went to for narcotics. I learned a lot from a lot of different guys that were working there. I know Point PD at the time, the chief, and I believe his sergeant, if I'm not mistaken, at the time, because I think there was only 2 of them there and they had a couple of reserves. But those 2 guys, they were really into the narcotics game. I know they were writing search warrants, and we would go, help them execute them. And I didn't ever see, what they got, but I know they were getting a lot of good stuff. But that's where I met both of them were pretty good friends of mine, but they're all off in different places now. Thankfully they're not working there in that county anymore, because even with the dope cases, when we turned those in, they weren't getting prosecuted. I know one guy, at one time, this is probably 2023, one of my old partners, he had popped him for a good sizable amount of meth, gets probation. I get him with a good amount of meth, and then they finally did something with him, but he was on the scope from the state. State was watching him pretty heavily, and they passed along some information. But yeah, just that was the running thing. It was come to Rains County, leave on probation type thing. But so during phase 2, I started learning how daytime stuff was working. Got to meet a lot of the firemen that work at Emory Fire. A lot of them, they work during the day, and they're able to go to calls during their work day if they get something major, which is, I think, pretty cool. Got to meet the fire chief of Emory. Really good guy. Like I said, he was a reserve for us, and he helped out a lot of things. Sorry, I'm watching a coyote over here. I didn't know there was any of those but in Texas, but yeah, there's coyotes up here. But anyways, got to meet a lot of those guys. The chief, phenomenal dude, awesome dude. Could go to him about anything. I don't know if he's still reserving. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but a lot of those guys were great, and miss all those guys. Those guys were fun to be around. But so learning day shift stuff, that one of the things that the admin at that time, they made sure is don't be at the office. We were constantly out and about. You weren't at the office during that time. So this is like 2019. Yeah, you weren't at the office. You stayed far away from the office, and you went and found stuff to do, pretty much. So anytime you're up at the office, we had a captain at the time. He goes, man, how's the crime rate here? It ain't, which for us, that's like, hey, go find something to do. Don't be at the office hanging around. But not a lot really went on during the day. Sometimes you would get something hectic, but it wasn't like night shift. Like I said, during that time frame, the call volume there wasn't very high at all. So the only way you really stayed busy was you being proactive yourself, going out and finding your own work to do. That was one of the nice things about that area and that county during that time is, you know, if you were getting information, you can build your own information and eventually, you know, type up your own search warrant for things if you wanted to. I know at that time we had a canine guy there at that time, but he didn't really use his dog a whole lot. We had 3 different canine guys, and that particular gentleman, he had left. He had resigned there due to allegedly, and I say this allegedly because I'd never seen any of this stuff. This is just what you hear during cop chatter. And, you know, for those of you that don't know what cop chatter is hearing it, you know, from different cops and different officers around that area, which we all know how that goes. Sometimes is you hear one thing, and then once somebody tells it to somebody else, it turns into something different. But the story on that was apparently he had altered a search warrant, and that was no good. You know, that's not good. So then he was able to resign. You know, nobody called the Rangers in, or you know, it never got sent to grand jury or anything like that. So that was quite interesting. But he was allowed to resign from there, so we didn't have a canine anymore, which you know, kind of sucked. But eventually we would, you know, there was a time period where there was a lot of Van Zant County sheriff's deputies that were coming from Van Zant over to Rains County. Apparently the sheriff at that time, I guess it wasn't going great over there, so a lot of them started coming over there. So during 2019 era, we didn't have a canine, but so we were having to call, you know, out of county canines if we ever needed one, which they would show up. A lot of the surrounding ones, they would show up and help out if they could. You know, they made sure to tell us, like, hey, make sure it's something good. You know, so that way they're not driving 30, 45 to an hour, you know, coming out here for nothing, which, you know, I don't blame them. I can see where it can be frustrating, you know, calling a dog every you know, every stop you get and you don't find anything. I can see where that can get annoying. And I think at that time too that there was a canine over in West Tawakoni, so we were able to call him if we needed him. So that was helpful. But at that time, Point PD, they were really proactive in the narcotics. So I kind of started, because I wasn't in training for phase 2 for very long. After that, they released me on my own and pretty much told me to, if you have any questions, ask. You know, if you have a hard time with something or you don't know something, you know, ask people around you. You know, that was the teamwork thing. You know, if you didn't know something, you ask somebody. Don't, you know, do your own thing and screw up. So, because I think I had the confidence at that time. I knew at that time I wasn't really scared of anything. You know, there's different kinds of, you know, being scared, good scare or the bad scare, where you don't do anything and then somebody can get hurt. But because there was a lot of times I was scared, but it, you know, kept me more aware, and it was the good kind of scare. So, but yeah, so I really kind of, once I was off on my own, I started kind of going towards those guys over at Point PD, trying to learn everything, you know, that it was going on. You know, all the narcotic stuff, because they had really good knowledge over there, especially the chief and the sergeant over there, Otwell, it was his last name. Cool dude, cool as fuck. I mean, you could ask him anything, he'd tell you. I mean, he'd been doing it a while. He actually worked at Rains County for a period of time. He was their canine at the time. I can't remember why he left, but I know he came back and went to Point, and they were doing really good stuff. So I started talking with him a lot. You know, he taught me a lot about the narcotics game, and just, you know, just to get after it, and, you know, just make all the drug dealers and everybody that's moving drugs around that county just to, you know, be mindful of you. Because that was one of the things that stuck, is at nighttime. You didn't go out at night or move any of your stuff at nighttime, because you were going to get stopped, especially after midnight. If you were out past midnight, we were figuring out what you were doing. So that was kind of a nice reputation to have. But one of the things I noticed is that, you know, a lot of the counties around us didn't really respect the sheriff's office at that time. They kind of thought of us as you know, the laughing joke, right? Which I never quite understood why. You know, they always said all the rejects, everybody goes to Rains County, which later on I figured out why. But so, you know, we're, you know, learning narcotic stuff, and I'm being out, you know, I'm on my own and just trying to learn everything. That's all I'm doing, was trying to soak up as much as I could during that time, because, I mean, you know, in Rains County, you didn't really have the call volume to be able to learn anything or experience anything, so that way you can get used to stuff. So you would kind of have to show up on other people's things and watch how they did stuff, and, you know, learn when to be a backup officer, and, you know, when you need to do certain things. But another interesting thing that happened during my phase 2 of training, well, after I was off training, there was one morning I had checked in service and noticed my first phase FTO was still out on a call, and he was by himself. So I went over there. Apparently it was somebody, there was a prowler walking around this lady's house, and she was scared, and that's why he was over there. So I show up, everybody's just outside talking, and, you know, just acting like nothing's wrong. And that my old FTO at the time, he told me, you know, was telling me what was going on, and seeing if I see anything that's out of the ordinary. And I'm like, no, I don't see anything. So I kind of walk around the house. Well, the neighbors go outside, and they're like, oh, what's going on? And, you know, I told them, like, hey, there was somebody walking around this house and last night. And so I'm just kind of walking around. I was like, have y'all heard anything, seen anything? They're like, no, we haven't seen anything or heard anything. I'm like, oh, okay. So, you know, we leave. I mean, that's that. We tell the lady that, you know, if he comes back, call her, because apparently it's an ex-boyfriend that she was having issues with. And I was like, oh, okay, well, just, you know, if he comes back during the day, you know, just let us know. But so we left, right? So I get a couple of days off, work my regular shift, and then I get a phone call from our IA guy, which at that time we had an IA guy that was a reserve deputy, and which that's the first time I learned about what internal affairs was. But he starts asking me all these questions about that particular morning, and I'm like, yeah, you know, checked in service like I normally do, got on my laptop, noticed he was still out on a call, so, you know, I went over there to relieve him so he can go home, because he had been working all night. So he was asking me a lot of these questions, if I seen anything out of the ordinary, or a bullet hole anywhere, and I'm like, no, didn't see any of that. I said everybody was chill and, you know, cool, and, you know, nobody was freaking out or saying anybody shot anything. So, you know, I was kind of thrown off by that question. And apparently, from what they were telling me, is that my old FTO at the time had shot his department gun in the garage of this house. And I'm like, really? I'm like, huh. I'm like, well, I mean, nobody was talking about that day. The neighbors didn't say anything. I never seen any bullet holes, but I didn't look in the garage either. So, which was kind of weird because I was like, well, where's this bullet? If he had shot his gun, where's this bullet at? If it's in the wall, you pull it out, right? Never once saw the bullet. I always asked, and the Emory officer that was working there at the time, he was asking me what I thought, and I'm like, I mean, I don't see that being a possibility, but I wasn't there, because he was really big into tactics and anything like that, and I don't believe that he would lift the garage door open and seeing his reflection in a mirror would scare him and he would shoot. That just didn't make sense to me at all. It didn't make sense at all. So that was kind of weird experience, which the IA guy at the time was just, he would come out late at night and drive around just to see if he can catch deputies doing something wrong. I remember one time, me and my partner, we were sitting at the tech stock because that was a good place to sit. Catch speeders at like 2 a.m. So it's just a good place to sit. And I remember he had drove by and we sat there and watched him because he would drive this blue Crown Vic. So we seen him drive by, and then he, I guess, went up to the office, I'm not sure, but then he turned around and came back, seen us parked there and pulled up and started talking to us. He's like, man, I just can't catch y'all doing anything wrong. I'm like, nope, just gonna see us, doing what we're getting paid to do. But so the running joke at that time when you seen him out at night, or seen him out during the day or anything like that, was he was watching somebody or somebody fixing to get fired. Because we had a first department meeting I was ever a part of. I remember one of my friends that worked on the other shift, he had came to the meeting and had seen the IA guy walk in. He looked back and he looked front and he goes, well, IA guy's here, I guess somebody's about to lose their job. And of course he's like, oh no, don't be that way. And we're like, well, it's kind of true, because normally when he was around, or if he showed up anywhere, it was because somebody was getting fired or he was about to start questioning somebody. But yeah, and I didn't really understand that, like going out looking for I don't know, that was weird to me. So I just kind of stayed away from that guy a lot, because I'm just like, man, I don't know why you want to be like that. And I feel like he took a lot of enjoyment in doing that as well. But I just don't see how you enjoy, always trying to catch somebody doing something. But at that time I was just kind of keeping to myself and, talking to people that I knew, because I tried to be friendly with everyone. But one of the things I learned during that time is, everybody was talking shit about everybody. And it didn't matter, somebody's always going to talk shit about you, period. You could be the best cop in the world, same thing's going to happen. People's going to talk shit about you. But the worst place to be at in that department was going into dispatch. And if you wanted anything about your life, you wanted anybody to know, go to dispatch, talk about it, because I guarantee you by the end of the day, everybody's going to know about it. That's just how it was. I don't know why, but that's just how it was. And over the years, it got worse too, because a lot of people were leaving. I was always told that Rains County was the training ground for everything. So people would come there, get about a year or two, and they would leave. To better places, and which was smart, especially now, because I think now it's from people that I've talked to, they're it's not very great place to be at over there. That's just what I've heard. But they might be telling the administration there's something different. That's very common too, because nobody's really going to speak up, because then the same thing that happened to some of the people there that aren't there anymore is going to happen to them. They're just going to start nitpicking people and pushing them out, forcing them out, or finding some reason to get them to leave. And unfortunately, that's just how it is there now. But so I, started learning a lot. Some of the day shift guys learned a lot of stuff. I still had a lot to learn. I had a different partner. Was working with my second phase FTO for a little bit, and then there was a particular guy that had came. He was from Alaska. His name was Roger Span, was his name, and that was probably one of the first partners that I ever really connected with, because it was me, him, and the Emory officer all night long. And he really taught me, because then from day shift went back to nights. So I went back to night shift and started working with him. He had been a police officer before over in Marshall PD, but his family, he had came down with his family from Alaska, and there was a bad wreck over in Wood County that ended up killing some of his family members. So he just ended up staying, and he seen that Rains County was hiring at the time, and he went and applied and got the job. So we got put back on nights, and started getting to know him a lot. And he was, as far as I know, he wasn't scared of nothing. He didn't act like it, for sure, because then the calls, especially when it started warming up, calls started getting a little bit more serious. So I was learning from the Emory officer that was working, and then my new partner that was very knowledgeable and wasn't really scared of shit. And then sometimes the point guys would be out at night because they were working some of their stuff that they were doing, so I would learn from them too. But at that time, everybody worked together. If we had a serious call, everybody's going to it. It was just more the merrier. At that time period, it was literally trying to fight to be the first one, at a domestic, or first one at a shots fired, stuff like that. But which was crazy to me, and it continued on for a couple more years, and then which I'll get more into it when we get there. But especially at the end of my career, I noticed a lot of people were gung-ho going to car crashes. Everybody wants to go to a car crash. But then it seemed like when we had somebody shooting at somebody, boy, not a lot of people were so gung-ho about going. Don't know why that was, but it was. It's just how it was. I still loved the job, still loved it there during that time frame. Hearing a lot of the negative stuff that was going on at the time didn't really, scare me away. I know a lot of people were encouraging me, like, hey, you need to get your year, get your 2 years, and then go. You need to go find somewhere else, because I started learning, started doing really well, taking everything that everybody was telling me and then just making it my own. Wrote my, we were handwriting tickets at that time, and like I said, anybody that was getting a ticket for me was because you either needed it or you're being an asshole, period. But and one of the things I started also noticing too is that we were arresting the same folks all the time, taking the same people to Terrell all the time. But the main thing was, arresting the same people all the time. There was one guy, Michael Bell. Some of y'all know him. I can't count on my fingers and toes how many times we took him to jail. I know over the years he got more aggressive. But it seemed like, once all the problem people that were in that county never, they didn't really do anything with. The one thing the DA over there would say, well, we got a convention jury. I can still do his impression to this day. But he would just blow smoke up everybody's ass, and he still does that to this day, I'm sure. I mean, nothing's ever changed with him. Two-faced, snake in the grass. And unfortunately, that's what that county's turned into. But I think we're gonna stop right there. But one of the funny stories that I have to tell you is that one of the county commissioners had reached out last week or the week before last. I didn't respond, but he was telling me about a call they went on, and this particular guy, he's a midget. So I got sent to a call one time about a guy stuck in his camper. So show up. I'm trying to get in this camper because I can hear the dude in there screaming, but I can't get to him. The camper's kind of hard. I'm trying to open the doors or whatever. Well, we end up getting inside. Well, it was a midget stuck in the bedroom in between the mattress and the wall, is what he was telling me. And I'm like, and I'm trying not to laugh. Well, the county commissioner, he works on the fire department, and he shows up to help me with it too. And it was just the funniest thing ever. And the dude, he's short, and he used to hang around with a lot of the dope heads that were over there. So when he see me, he remembered me, and we just started talking for a while. Well, a couple weeks ago, the county commissioner at Rains, he'd reached out and told me they went back out there to that house, and that guy had told him if he could tell me that he said hi. So that was just kind of funny, that people still remember me over there, and wonder where I'm at, and wonder what's going on with my life. It's crazy. I don't really talk to a lot of people anymore. Not a lot of people know what I'm doing or anything like that. But so I think that was kind of, I didn't respond back to the county commissioner, which you'll understand as more far we get into it, because at one time, there was 2 county commissioners that would ride along with me every weekend. They alternated. They'd come right out and see what we did at night, and that was the reason for us getting raises, and a lot of stuff going, and just everything. But we'll talk more about that whenever that time comes. I don't want to give too much away and then leave everybody confused, which y'all might be confused now. But hope everybody has a good night, and a good May, month of May. Hopefully it's good for y'all, and try to get these videos out. I know some folks are like, hey, when's the next video? So I'm hoping it's entertaining for some people. Hopefully it gets a lot more views and starts getting a lot more notice, and I think it will once we get to the end of my career, because especially when it starts getting to that point, that's when it's going to start to get interesting, especially just the way how it happened, and the end of it. It's sad when during that time frame I couldn't go into any grocery store. Every time I went in there, 2, 3, 4 people would come up to me and tell me how awful it was, what that county was doing to me, and if they can help in any way to let them know. And I'm like, I appreciate it. If I need it, I'll let you know. Still miss all those people over there in that county. It was a real nice county to work for. Every now and then you had that one person you just couldn't please. I mean, that's just part of it. I don't know anywhere that where you can please everybody, but that was one of the comforting things. Not a lot of people were really judging, but there was a few, but they didn't know what happened. They just go off of what they heard from somebody else. But which was funny is I went back at some of the Facebook posts that some folks made in the comments that were in there. One of the comments I read was, oh, they just had to pull that deputy off of him during that incident. I'm like, lady, you weren't even there. Nobody was pulling me off because they were all trying to get this dude under control. So you know, I don't know where you got that from, but yeah. So I think we're gonna end it here for the night. Try to get one out on Sunday. But I know I made a couple of videos that way I can keep them, you know, keep them coming through, and then hopefully we'll have some guests here. It'll be a different setup, a lot better setup. Ordered a few things to hopefully help with the audio and you know, the stage of the phone, like a little tripod or whatever. But still building my regular podcast setup, that way I can keep doing videos and stuff like that even after this story's done, because I'm still going to do them. If I see certain things, you know, we'll get on there and talk about it, or try to have different people that I've worked with, you know, come on and tell their side, you know, tell their story about their whole law enforcement career, or, you know, their time at Rains County and just everything that they thought, felt, you know, everything like that. I know there's one that his name on TikTok, it's Pink Cuffs. I'm sure a lot of you might know who he is, but he wants to come on. I'll have to reach out and see if he still wants to do that. There's a couple I need to reach out and talk to him, and see if they want to still do that or not. But I know there's one that I need to ask, because it's important. Just throughout this whole story was one of our canine guys that worked there. You know, unfortunately his dog it passed away, which some of y'all might know, but you know, the story behind that was unreal too. It's crazy how he was treated during that whole time frame, especially when the new administration took over. I know there was, you know, the chief deputy over there. Apparently, he worked in unauthorized off-duty and was asked to be bumped down back to patrol or resign. And from my understanding, he resigned. And I'm like, so how does a chief deputy can't work an off-duty? And I believe it was at a wedding venue that was in the county. If I'm wrong, let me know. But you know, I don't know how that's unauthorized. But you know, one of the interesting things that I seen last weekend was one of Rains County's deputies working an off-duty outside the county, you know, over in the Metroplex area. So I wonder if that's authorized. Because I know one of the things that the new sheriff had said is that he didn't really like anybody working off duties out, you know, out in that area. So, you know, picking and choosing is what I see. But I had seen one of them working an off-duty gig over there. So don't know if they know about it. They probably do, but to me, that's just bullshit. If, you know, we're going to allow one person to do one thing, but a chief deputy can't even go work something that's in the county, and you're going to say that's a policy violation? I mean, if that doesn't already show you right there, like, that's just ridiculous. And it wasn't like that at one time. It just, overnight, it was just like if a switch was flipped, and it was just, the new sheriff was just a whole different person. And a lot of the people that I used to work with, you know, hope they're doing okay. Hope they've decided they need to leave there before they become, you know, an example, or made an example of, because for some reason, that's just how that's how I was treated. The main example of, I was used as a well, we can do it to him, guess what, we're gonna do it, we could do it to all of you, so y'all need to start following, you know, what we tell you to do. But we'll get into more of that as the episodes go on. If y'all can think of anything that helps me make these videos better, great. Anybody needs to reach out and just to talk, you know, reach out to me. Phone number's still the same. But hope y'all have a good night, and you know, stay tuned for other videos.